Donald Trump declared war on the American people. He changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War for a reason. He called Chicago the Chi-apocalypse. And I'll be damned if he come to New Orleans and do the same thing. We will not stand for this. We must be clear. This is a war that we're in. And when there's war, we recruit everybody. We recruit anybody and everybody that is willing to fight. So I'm standing here right now recruiting every politician. I should not be the only candidate out here that's running for office right now.
We got a rapist for a president. Damn, they'll take that over black and it's evident. This motherfucker got a rap sheet. That fake shooter was a patsy. We lost a race in a blink. We lost a
The state of emergency is in America, not Chicago, and is birthed from this president and his administration. Dr. King said he could not raise his voice against the violence of the oppressed without having first spoken clearly to the greater purveyor of violence, his own country. And those are my words to you, Mr. Trump. Before you dare speak about any violence in Chicago, look into your mirror and address the violence coming from the White House. The violence of cutting SNAP, which will cut $2.4 million in food access, put 360,000 Illinoisans at risk by taking food off their tables. Address the violence of cutting Medicare and Medicaid by $500 million, reducing access to doctors, and threatening the closure of hospitals and nursing home facilities throughout the state of Illinois. Literally putting Americans in life and death situations. Some Americans will die because of your Medicaid cuts.
Yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally, one that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week, Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens.
Yeah, look, Alex, this is in response to that news that we recently learned that during the Jack Smith investigation, the phone records of 9 Republican members of Congress, 8 senators, and 1 House member were obtained by the FBI as part of that Jack Smith investigation that was, of course, into the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Now, we had heard from members of Congress, those Republicans that were, they say, spied on, outraged, right? They were up in arms over this development that had been learned after an FBI document was obtained by Senator Chuck Grassley. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So now, in response to this outrage, we are seeing some of these members of Congress take action. So that letter today, led by Marsha Blackburn, one of the 9 whose phone records were obtained, along with 4 others, Lindsey Graham, Tommy Tuberville, Dan Sullivan, and Mike Kelly. They wrote a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, slamming the action, saying that the effort of obtaining their phone records, there were constitutional concerns, prosecutorial misconduct, and they're also saying there was no predicate for the action of obtaining their files. I want to read part of this for you. Quote, "It is clear to us that this invasion of our privacy was nothing more than a fishing expedition geared towards targeting President Trump." Now, specifically here, Alex, the group is asking Pam Bondi to refer Jack Smith and any prosecutors who helped with the issuance of these subpoenas for phone records to the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility. This is part of the DOJ that was established in 1975 after Watergate. It's essentially meant to make sure that the DOJ acts in a proper way, that its duties are properly carried out. These 5 lawmakers are saying that once that entity does its investigation, they believe that there will be credence for Jack Smith to be disbarred. I want to read to you again part of this letter. Quote, "We firmly believe that upon examination of OPR's findings, these state entities, the ones where Jack Smith has a license to practice law, should consider all options in holding Smith accountable for this misconduct, including disbarment." So again, Alex, we knew that there was this outrage among these 9 Republican members of Congress over this news of their phone records being obtained. They are turning that outrage into action right now. We will reach out to Jack Smith to see if he has any comment on this development, but absolutely will be a story we'll continue to follow.
We have some major news right now. Venezuela is mobilizing its troops and militias throughout the country, preparing for war against the United States of America. This comes as the United States has, obviously, as you know, the warships, the Navy the military has struck a number of Venezuelan boats in the southern Caribbean. But also there are about 10,000 American troops near the border of Venezuela. And while it looks as though it's increasingly likely that the United States could potentially invade Venezuela in the coming weeks to potentially oust Nicolas Maduro. And so Venezuelan troops and militias have officially been mobilized. Now, Venezuelan troops are very ill-equipped compared to the United States military. The military comparisons are really, there is none. But what is clear is that the United States could be drawn into potentially a long war and a long regime change situation in Venezuela in South America. This is very big news right now. So spread the word. Full updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free. Follow along for more.
Shame on you and your black man! They will come for all of us! They will come for all of us! Let's go home! 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 Let's go home!
They were born to be criminals, frankly.
This is one of the most dangerous and quite honestly gross things I've heard a president of the United States say. You're going to hear Donald Trump, the president of the United States, set the stage for a broader deployment of federal troops in cities like Chicago and Baltimore this time. And he does so not by describing the act of criminal conduct, but the people who live in this city. This is what he has to say.
In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals.
That statement is beyond reproachable. The president is talking about cities with majority-minority populations as places where people who are born to be criminals live. I don't think I need to explain the racial implications of a statement like that. By saying that people are born to be criminal, Trump is also saying that crime is a trait that defines people at birth. This clearly echoes the rhetoric that was heard in the 1930s in Germany, and it's a dangerous rhetoric because it eventually allows the government to justify things like preventive incarceration and the confinement of specific groups. Trump is also telling children, you might be born a criminal, so forget about the American dream, forget about the fact that anything is possible in this country and that you control your own destiny. The government might brand you as a criminal, so you might as well stop trying. Is that really the message we want the White House to send to America? Is this what you voted for? A country where incarceration isn't about rehabilitating or reintegrating, it's only about punishment and isolation. A country where the guarantees of equal protection under the law are completely raised because, guess what, Well, the president just branded you a born criminal. This is the message coming out of the president's mouth today, a message that denies human dignity or the ability to improve and grow. This is the foundation for discriminatory policies, for a justice system that doesn't have to be just, but only punish. It goes against every core value of justice and fairness and equal opportunity that should be at the root of our country. And once again, it makes me a little less proud to be part of this America.
Intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power.
But it seems that the ones that are run by the radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places, and we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within.
We have breaking news right now. Donald Trump just freed George Santos from federal prison, announcing that he will be commuting the rest of George Santos's prison term. George Santos was sentenced to several years in prison for fraud, for defrauding the people of New York. He then went and ran for Congress, lying about his resume, was convicted, was one of the only representatives to actually be removed from Congress by his fellow members of Congress, and well, now he has been freed. Donald Trump announced that he just signed a commutation of George Santos's prison sentence, which means that he will be immediately freed from custody. Now, here's the thing. Santos was sentenced to 7 years. He only served a few months in prison, so he's not like he was actually punished much for his crimes. And it's not a full pardon, which means he's still a convicted felon, but it is a commutation. Alas, another day in 2025. As always, spread the word. Full updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free. Follow along for more.
We don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that it's America, and we're willing to die to protect it. Those values and ideas are contained within the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the moral North Star for all of us who have the privilege of wearing the cloth of our nation. Those who sacrificed themselves on the altar of freedom in the last 2.5 centuries of this country must not have done so in vain. The millions wounded in our nation's wars did not sacrifice their limbs and shed their blood to see this great experiment in democracy perish from this earth. No, we the American people, we the American military, must never turn our back on those that came before us. And we will never turn our back on the Constitution. That is our North Star, that is who we are, and that is why we fight.
Trump apparently now does not remember that he sat in the White House alone in a room beside the Oval Office, watching his mob attack the Capitol for 187 minutes without saying a public word about it and without doing anything about it at all. Donald Trump no longer remembers that he was present on January 6th. And actually no longer remembers that he didn't tell the FBI what to do that day. That was one day when Donald Trump had no orders for the FBI. Donald Trump did not tell the military what to do that day. Donald Trump didn't tell anyone what to do that day, but he doesn't remember any of that now. It was Vice President Mike Pence who took over the authority of the presidency during the attack on the Capitol and did everything he could from the executive branch to order reinforcements rush to the Capitol. This is yet another.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. While the unemployment rate remains low, it has edged up. Job gains have slowed and downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated. In support of our goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by 0.25 percentage point. We also decided to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has moderated. GDP rose at a pace of around 1.5% in the first half of the year, down from 2.5% last year. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending. In contrast, business investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from last year's pace. Activity in the housing sector remains weak. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects GDP to rise 1.6% this year and 1.8% next year, a touch stronger than projected in June.
Talk is cheap. Release the Epstein files. Donald Trump and congressional Republicans rather protect pedophiles and billionaires than swear in Adelita Grijalva.
The only thing that we're asking of Republicans right now is to protect survivors the same way that you've decided that you want to protect billionaires and pedophiles.
Now, Donald Trump called this a hoax. After talking to the survivors, we know this is not a hoax. It's very real. We need justice. The American people deserve transparency.
We need Republicans to act. We need to release the Epstein files. We need to hold abusers accountable.
Bring the House back now.
According to Republicans, Democrats are waiting until Saturday's protests to reopen the government. The talking point makes no particular sense because nothing about these rallies relate to anything about the shutdown. But I guess Republicans need something to say about what may end up as the largest series of rallies in American history. Look at this. More than 2,500 No Kings events, separate events, big and small, are scheduled for Saturday. These protests are not just happening in Democratic cities. They are happening everywhere. This is a nationwide movement. The former U.S. Labor Secretary Robert Reich wrote this week, quote, Trump's power depends on maintaining the illusion that he's all powerful and that most Americans, apart from those he and his lapdogs label pro-Hamas terrorists and Antifa, adore him. But that illusion is harder to maintain if a significant part of the population of every town and city is on the streets decrying him. The emperor has no clothes.
Breaking news now. We are monitoring a very tense situation on the ground in Illinois where we're seeing protesters clash with officials outside of an ICE facility in Broadview. Several of them taken away in a van earlier this morning. Joining us now, MSNBC's Rosa Flores, keeping an eye on this. Rosa, what's happening there in Broadview right now?
Ariel, good morning. We have new information just into our newsroom about the arrests being made. As you just mentioned, there have been clashes earlier today there in Broadview, Illinois, outside the ICE facility. You can see in some of these images at some points the state police and other law enforcement in a line formation moving, advancing towards protesters. And at points in time, those protesters on the ground getting zip-tied and then taken away. Now, this information, according to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, as of 10 a.m. this morning, 9 arrests have been made. The ages of those arrested are between the ages of 25 and 44. The charges are pending. The charging an agency is Illinois State Police. Now, we've seen these types of eruptions outside the ICE facility for about a month now. I was in Chicago last week, earlier this week as well. I've talked to some of the protesters out there, some of them who have been protesting for about a month outside that facility, and many of them tell me that they are fed up with the enhanced immigration enforcement by the Trump administration, and they feel compelled to be outside this facility. For the most part, the protests are peaceful. We have seen people with signs, singing, chanting, sometimes even dressed in costumes, simply exercising their First Amendment rights. Many of them that I talked to said that they're also out there because they feel that they are speaking out for the immigrant community that's in Chicago, that is in hiding. Many of those individuals are immigrants, perhaps too afraid to go to school or to go to the grocery store. They're staying cooped up in their homes. And so individuals who are U.S. citizens there in Chicago are out protesting outside this facility to bring attention to the enhanced tactics used by ICE. And Ariel, we're probably going to see a lot more of these protests this weekend, of course, with the No Kings protest coming up on Saturday. And we won't just see it in Chicago, but in cities across the country.
And I rise up, I rise like the day, I rise up, I rise unafraid, I rise up. And
today, this was a large protest on the lawn at the main campus quad at the University of Virginia. This is the protest there today with students and faculty and staff telling the UVA administration that they should refuse to sign this deal with the devil compact with the Trump administration to supposedly get special preferences in federal funding if you agree to Trump's ideological strictures on your academic freedom. This was the protest today at UVA, telling the UVA administration, don't you dare, do not sell us out, don't you sign that thing. This was today. And then this, tonight, was the statement, in fact, released by UVA's president, saying, okay, we're not doing it. We have told the Trump administration no. Remember when it was just Harvard standing up and all the other universities were too intimidated to say no? Well, now even the ones that caved before or that signed deals before with Trump, places like Brown University, even those schools have now learned that maybe signing deals with Trump is not a good idea. Trying to appease him, trying to stay on his good side is folly. It just shows weakness. It invites him to come back and bully you some more. And so in quick succession, we have seen MIT and Brown and Penn and USC and now UVA as well. They've all told the Trump White House, no, we're not doing it. We're not signing on to your little compact to restrict our academic freedom and our ideological freedom of movement in order to try to keep you happy. No, we are not doing it. We have learned our lesson. Forget it.
Like many of you, I've become increasingly concerned about the rising wave of authoritarianism sweeping the globe. We're seeing politicians target civil society, undermine freedom of the press, weaponize the justice system. And no one is being spared. Even countries that thought they were immune from wholesale assaults on democracy now understand we're all part of this struggle. That's an enormous challenge, but it also means we can learn from each other. I recently sat down with 3 leaders who are part of the Obama Foundation's alumni network to discuss their work in Hungary and Poland, 2 countries on the leading edge of confronting autocracy. People like Stefania, Sandor, and Susanna, they give me hope. And it's why a big part of our mission here at the Foundation is to connect, inspire, and empower leaders like them. All 3 of you have been fighting the good fight and rising up in the face of significant challenges to try to strengthen democracy. And so you're setting an example for all of us in the United States, here in the UK,
Democracy is something to be practiced regularly. We need people to be engaged and to be empowered for them to feel the ownership of the country, that it's theirs, and not to give it away to someone.
Admirals' revolt against the Trump regime has begun. Utter turmoil and chaos taking place in the United States military right now as yet another top commander has suddenly resigned. This time, the top commander in Latin America, Alvin Halsey, suddenly quit less than 1 year into his tenure as the head of Southern Command, the individual in charge of the United States Navy in Latin America. Apparently, this resignation comes based on his strong opposition to the Trump regime's war crimes taking place off the coast in Venezuela and Colombia, where the Trump regime continued to demand unlawful orders be carried out in the form of blowing up these fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia as well. Here's the reporting. 4-star Admiral Alvin Halsey, head of Southern Command, stepping down after less than a year in his position. One of the U.S. officials said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on alleged drug boats. The reporting from CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, and others is as follows. Tensions were simmering between Secretary of Defense, who unlawfully refers to himself as Secretary of War, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, and Halsey for weeks. Hegseth did not believe that Halsey was moving quickly and aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean and complained about not being given info he needed about ops per sources. But Southcom, which is what Alvin Halsey, Admiral Halsey led, was concerned about the operations not being lawful. In other words, that war crimes were being committed, and Admiral Halsey did not want to be a part of these war crimes. I can't emphasize enough how unusual a resignation like this is, and I think it demonstrates what I think will soon take place with mass resignations amongst the top admirals and generals. As Phil Ur says, U.S. Admiralty was born after the Civil War. A 4-star admiral quitting mid-operation, the way Halsey just did, is a rupture of that order. Halsey's exit amid lethal Caribbean strikes is a 5-alarm warning. Trump and Hegseth are pushing unlawful orders and driving commanders out. The Admirals' revolt has begun. The Admirals' revolt against the Trump regime has begun.
Tragically, we have a 2-bit demagogue who is president of the United States right now. And he understands that his policies are failing, prices are going up. He's trying to defend a health care package which will throw 15 million people off the health care they have and double premiums for 20 million Americans. He can't defend that, and he knows that. So what he's doing now is running around the country, threatening to arrest the governor of the state of Illinois, to arrest the mayor of the city of Chicago, to go after a United States senator, threaten to investigate him, go after the Attorney General, Letitia James, in New York, the former FBI director. So this is a guy who can't bring positive change to working people. But what he can do is terrorize the country, be an all-powerful type of guy, undermine the Constitution, undermine the rule of law. So we got a message from Mr. Trump. Too many Americans in Vermont and every other state in this country have fought and died to defend democracy. And democracy means you disagree with me, that's fine. You don't like me, throw me out of office. Don't vote for me. But we don't go around arresting public officials in this country because we can't defend the terrible public policies that we're bringing forth. Tough moment. Let's stand together. We can win this thing. Thank you.
The weekend, we received numerous confirmed reports of federal agents from ICE and Customs and Border Patrol abusing their power, intimidating innocent civilians, and waging war on our people. All of this has been aimed at causing chaos and mayhem in the hopes of creating a pretext to deploy military troops against Chicago and Broadview and other suburbs, just as the president is doing right now in Oregon. Moments ago, the Illinois National Guard received word that the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to the Department of War seeking the deployment of 100 military troops to Illinois, claiming a need for the protection of ICE personnel and facilities. What I have been warning of is now being realized.
A federal judge says ICE agents must wear body cameras after violent clashes with protesters in Chicago. The move comes after the agents were sent in for a sweeping immigration crackdown by the Trump administration. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis says she's deeply concerned with apparent violations of her earlier order restricting the use of force and riot control weapons. In this video, you can see ICE agents strike a minister in the head with pepper balls. Now the judge is ordering the field director of ICE in Chicago to appear in court Monday to answer questions about agents being recorded using tear gas and deploying other crowd control methods.
We have breaking news right now. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has announced that the Qatari government will build a Qatari Air Force facility on United States soil in Idaho. Yes, I'm serious. He just made a statement alongside a Qatari official at the Pentagon where he said, quote, "I'm proud that today we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. It will house Qatari F-15 fighter jets and Qatari troops on American soil." The Qatari government will now have what is akin to an Air Force base within the United States of America in Idaho. Remember, this is the same government that gave Donald Trump as a gift a massive Boeing 747 jet that he will soon use as Air Force One. Spread the word. Full updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free. Follow along, stay up to date on all the news you need to know about. I'll have much more to come soon.
If you don't have any art, you're pretty much lost.
Kan noen være så snill å slå av internett?